Hello, welcome to another managerial special from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Craig Savage, and with me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Cody. Today, we're talking about Birmingham City. They have sacked Lee Bowyer and hired John Eustace as the new head coach. In a statement, it says, agreeing terms on a 3-year contract. His appointment comes ahead of the 2022-23 Sky Bet Championship season and the first team's pre-season trip to Portugal next week. As recently as last month, he was operating in the position of assistant manager at QPR. Since March of this year, he has fulfilled the role as assistant manager of Republic of Ireland's men's national team under Stephen Kenny as they end the last international break with success over Scotland and a draw on the road against Ukraine in UEFA Nations League. We won't speak about the rest before that. Speaking to BirminghamCityFC.com, I'm very proud to be here. Obviously, I'm a Birmingham lad, and I know the potential of the club and how important it is to the fans. We have underachieved in the past few seasons, and a club of this size, with the support that this club has, we need to be aiming higher. The big picture is to get us as competitive as we can, to build a team that the fans are proud of, and win as many games as we can. The first thing we have to do is get the squad competitive and ready for that first game of the season against our beloved Luton Town. 3-year deal, replacing Lee Bowyer. Let's talk about Lee Bowyer first. Didn't have the best of seasons last season. They finished 20th, but his hands were tied.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because the fans probably rightly weren't happy with what they were doing on the pitch towards the end, but it's very understandable and there's a lot of mitigating circumstances. So first of all, obviously, he came in and helped with the Great Escape in the 2021 season when he came in March and got them well clear of that danger zone. But last season, they actually started pretty promisingly. Obviously, everyone remembers in August their 5-0 win away at Luton Town, which obviously we'll be seeing again in a few weeks' time at Kenilworth Road, because no matter what happens, Birmingham will get 3 points against Luton. But I've got to say that the last 6 months, I know they always talk about things off the pitch not affecting your form on it, but it's impossible not to in the circumstances Birmingham have been in, because half of the stadium was closed, for goodness sake. They couldn't open 2 of the stands because they're in disrepair. The ownership situation will probably form a whole nother conversation and episode later down the line. They've then had various protests at games being stopped because tennis balls are being thrown onto the pitch and whatever. You can't say that it then can't affect you on the pitch. So not a good situation. Obviously, the investment has dried up. A lot of the players coming in recent windows have been loans, free agents. I admit Lee Bowyer hasn't helped himself with the way he's managed some players and has had his odd little altercations at both Charlton and Birmingham, and maybe hasn't had the best communication pass with the boardroom. But overall, he did the job he needed to in the first season. That if it wasn't for points deductions, they would have been in right trouble last year, all the way up to the final day. So you can't say he's done a good job, but there's mitigating circumstances towards it. But ultimately, there was always going to be a change at some point this summer.
Yeah, there's the off-the-field stuff and been talks of a takeover with Lawrence Bassini, formerly of Watford and Bolton.
Almost liquidated Bolton, didn't he? Let's be honest.
Almost liquidated Bolton, and he gave it the big one and said, I'm getting my own guy in. It sounds like in the background, like he pretty much got John Eustace the job. And that's not being disrespectful to John Eustace at all. It sounds like that was his main guy to go to.
Well, it's a bit worrying for me putting the pieces together, because take aside this manager special, which we've got to concentrate on, the bigger picture at Birmingham is what's going on off the pitch. There's no doubt about that, because that's going to form their next few seasons. And that car crash interview he did on TalkSport that most people have heard now, where he came in talking about what managers coming in, what players are coming in, when he's not even got a right to own the club yet. He's then missed his period for exclusivity. It's all chaos. But when he said that John Eustace is the man he'd want in charge, and John Eustace then turns up a few weeks later, he's obviously known him from the days at Watford as well. It's a few alarm bells triggering for me, because I'm going to say this now, if Lawrence Bassini gets in at Birmingham, there's going to be bigger problems than even under this current owner. So there's worries for me on that side, but I'm not going to judge John Eustace on it. There are bigger issues at Birmingham as well. I mean, the fact that they even dared to put out the statement about Lee Bowyer saying they acted swiftly when it's 8 weeks after the season ended and they're already back for pre-season is scandalous. But look, off the pitch situations at Birmingham are going to overshadow everything. My worry is, does John Eustace realistically even have a chance because of the backdrop at the club? That's my biggest concern in this.
And they're back in pre-season, and the start of the season is in 3 weeks' time.
I actually think the person it harms the most is the new coach, because he's now playing catch up the whole way through. I mean, we talked about it on social media a little bit. He's now got to catch up on recruitment. He's got a bit less of pre-season. They've obviously not even got a full squad contracted at the moment, which is another concern we've got to talk about. They can't even fill a bench at the minute and barely a starting 11. And they've got, less than 4 weeks until the first game of the season. The person it harms the most is the new head coach, because it's going to take time to get up to speed. Yes, you might get that initial bounce of 2 or 3 games, but then do you end up with a similar problem if the recruitment's coming late in the window, if there's catch up because the ownership's not gone through or the takeover until the middle of July, then the fans turn against you because you've not got off to a great start. Then you end up on a downward spiral. It all seems very familiar from a Birmingham point of view, which is a shame to say, because as was highlighted in the statement, they're a big enough club to not really be worrying about championship relegation.
If anyone took over the job, fans still won't be pleased with that, considering it's still who owns the club?
Well, I think we saw with the initial reaction, didn't we, on social media and on fans forums and that, it's not really about the manager or who's taken over. There's just a general apathy and frustration towards the club at the minute. And I mean, we were there in the 2000s with our club as well. Lots of clubs have been through this situation, but it doesn't help that new manager is coming in, or head coach is coming into a backdrop of fan protests, uncertainty in the boardroom. And how can fans really get behind a head coach or a club when they haven't got a full squad in place and they know that there's chaos behind the scenes, and whatever head coach is going to come in, have they really got a fair chance to succeed? Because their hands are tied to an extent, as you said with Bowyer earlier on. So I understand and empathise with the fans' position, but ultimately it equally won't help on the pitch, the fact that the full support, and there's almost an apathy towards the new head coach. A lot of them just, who's this person? But they've never been a manager before. Whereas where we've had that with other managerial appointments earlier in the summer at other clubs, there's generally been a bit of excitement of, I wonder what they're going to achieve. But it's another inexperienced appointment, and the fans just, I think they're not on board, because they know a young manager who's not got a lot of experience might get eaten up with this situation behind the scenes.
Let's talk about the man himself, John Eustace. Not much of a managerial career. Only had the one job with Kidderminster Harriers. A very good record at Kidderminster Harriers, but it was very low down in the football pyramid. I know he's had assistant manager jobs. This is a big jump.
It is a big jump, but it's not the first one we've seen from Championship this summer. We've had Beale at QPR. I know that Company's not been a manager for too long, neither is John Dale Thomason. So there are situations that we've seen this summer that are similar to this. But as you mentioned, he did a really good job at Kidderminster, albeit with a club that probably are one of the biggest supported in the division. But he took them to back-to-back playoffs, had over a 50% win rate. He did really well. Had an average stint as caretaker at QPR, where he was in 6 or 7 games, I think, a few years ago. But as you say, he's got a good coaching grounding in recent years. He's been working in both national and club teams, which helps. But most importantly, he's worked under a good coach in Mark Warburton, who's done a really solid job and built a club that perhaps had similar difficulties behind the scenes in recent years prior. So maybe that gives him well versed in this situation. I don't know. He's obviously been involved in the chaos of Watford as a senior player over the years as well. So he maybe has got a little bit more of an understanding of the situation. But I always feel for managers or head coaches that get put into this situation. I mean, even if you look at when we did the Michael Apple one at Blackpool, and you sort of judge his early career based on his success on the pitch. But the first 3 jobs, he was working in chaos. And for John Eustace, it's much the same here. So he's well versed. He's got a good coaching backdrop, and he is pretty well regarded. But I do worry that he's putting himself into a cauldron that he's just not going to be able to deal with, because it's so unpredictable, the situation at Birmingham at the moment. But they've got a good coach. They've got to get behind him now. And the key, as we've said so often this summer, is when is he going to be able to recruit, and what sort of players is he going to bring in? Being a head coach, are they going to be his own players?
Yeah, well, let's have a prediction on how he will get on. First game is against Luton away. As you quite rightly pointed out, Birmingham always seem to get 3 points against Luton. Well, Birmingham's 2 best games last season was against Luton, home and away. So how do you see John Eustace starting his reign?
Well, I see him immediately starting it with 3 points, because that's the rule. That's a given. But look, it's going to be a really tough season. If there's not a positive takeover with someone other than Lawrence Bassini and someone that's got a little bit of business acumen about them, I'll be honest, I can't see how they're not in the bottom 3. The only reason they weren't right in that mix last season is because of the points deductions to Reading and Derby. And with respect, there's probably not teams in the league at the moment on a smaller budget as Peterborough, or who have had as awful a managerial appointment in the summer as Barnsley did last year. So I don't really see how they're able to get out of relegation trouble this year unless there's a lot of signings, a lot of good ones. But even then, it's the patience of waiting 8 to 10 to 12 games for them to get settled in. So I think after the first day, it will probably be a quite difficult start. And I really worry. I hate to say it because I don't like to see someone in their first job have a tough time, but I think he might have bitten off a bit more than he can chew. He's taken the chance because it's there, but I don't think he lasts the 3 years. I worry about Birmingham and administration and points deductions this year. I worry about this takeover fiasco. And look, when you've not got the chance to make your home ground a fortress because half of it's not open, the fans aren't really happy with what's going on at the club. It's a horrible situation to be in. It's a difficult first job. Fair play to him for taking a challenge, but I only see struggle. And bar a miracle and a big change, when we come to our pre-season predictions in 2 or 3 weeks' time, Birmingham will probably be in my bottom 3, to be honest.
Yeah, I think their season will be decided by off the field stuff. I really do. And it's not good. Well, for me to say that it should be decided off the field. We said that with Derby last season. I don't think John Eustace lasts the season, in my opinion. And that's not on him. It's just the chaos of Birmingham City Football Club, how it's run at this present time, even with a takeover. Well, whoever takes over, they might not want John Eustace as the head coach. So, and it'll be a total waste of money. They'll have to pay him off. So I think on the pitch wise, it all determines from the first game of the season for me for Birmingham, especially being at Kenneth Road. I know they won 5-0 their last season, but it's a totally different Birmingham City team compared to last season. That was at the time. Looking convinced that they beat them, it could be a very long season for Birmingham. I think they'll be in the bottom 4. I don't know about relegation yet. We haven't done a prediction yet, but I can see them being in the bottom 4 regardless. And that's not John Eustace's fault. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I just want to say, Craig, I don't think there are many managers that could have gone in and succeeded this year. I don't think it's because of the appointment. I think it's because of where the club are.
Takeover's got to be done right. I think the EFL won't even give it a chance anyway. If they've done a fit and proper person's test, I don't think they'll give him a chance. I know he's had a ban. Why would you give someone a ban and then let him go have another go at another club? It doesn't make any sense to me. But that's again ahead of ourselves. We're talking about John Eustace being appointed head coach. But yeah, I don't think he'll last the season for me, and it's not on him. And that's our thoughts on the appointment of John Eustace as head coach of Birmingham City. Let us know in the comments what you think will happen to John Eustace this season and to Birmingham in 22-23 season. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at HonestFootball3, and you see if the predictions